Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, grab a copy off that shelf, pop it in our VCR, and see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Oh, sorry, I was closing my eyes and falling asleep. But I do miss you, Justin.
It's good to know, Mike. And together we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. So, Mike, I appreciate you joining me today. I know you're kind of worn out, especially during that opening there. But, I was noticing something weird about Hollywood, Mike, if you can believe it or not.
What's that?
On occasion, they have some scheduling problems. I don't know if you noticed that too, but occasionally they feel compelled to put out two identical movies within a few months of each other and make the desperate movie-going public have to choose between what version of a premise they want to go see.
Oh.
You know,
is it kind of like when the Addams Family and the Monsters both came out as TV shows? The same.
Yeah, you're in the neighborhood, Mike.
Okay.
But yeah, so we had two Wyatt Earp stories were fun. Talk about that story. So they made us choose between Wyatt Earp and Tombstone, movie that we covered a few shows back. Check that out, everybody. It's a great show, one of our best. You also had Volcano coming out around the same time as Dante's Peak.
Yes.
A little more lofty taste. You had the movie Capote with Philip Seymour Hoffman come out at the same time as the movie Notorious, which I think is a much better film, starring, I think it was Sandra Bullock, show favorite Sandra Bullock as Harper Lee in that movie. But again, telling the same story about, Truman Capote's writing of his famous novel. And then you had this one. 1998's Armadillo, Mike.
Armadillo, yes, that's right. I love it.
Armageddon. Sorry, Armageddon.
Yes.
Came out against Deep Impact, which is another. Well, I guess it's technically different. That movie was about a comet. This one's about an asteroid. So forgive me.
Oh, was it a comet? Okay, I just remember Frodo Baggins being in it. That's about all I can remember.
Yeah, Frodo. Yeah. So essentially, what they make you do is choose between a crappy movie and a more crappy movie, and which leads us to this one, Mike. So,
this one's been on our back burner for a few months now.
Yeah, we've referenced this tangentially through a lot of our other conversations, and I think all lines have kind of met up now. And
this is the quintessential grumpy nostalgia movie. It's funny. It's kind of coming full circle because one of the movies that was recommended after I finished watching this was Twister, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was the very first podcast we did, and they're very similar in some ways, And
we've all of our plot points have triangulated, and I think we've hit
That's
our
right.
center.
So is this our last podcast, Justin? Did this movie?
I think this will wrap it up. I think, how are you going to top Con Air in space, Mike?
I don't know, man.
All right, let's give it a shot. All right, so this was released on July 1st, 1998. It was directed by Michael Bay.
Of course.
Famous director, known for his unique style of several shots of things. This was written by a guy named Jonathan Hansley, who wrote The Saint, and a lot of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles shows. It's actually pretty good. A guy named J.J. Abrams, who had the opportunity to go uncredited here, but chose to put his name on this. We all know J.J. from the last three Star Wars movies. He wrote Lost, Alias, and Felicity, which is one of my favorite shows of the early aughts, you could say. It was also written by a guy named Tony Gilroy, which is kind of hurts because this guy wrote most of the series Andor, which I was a big fan of, the movie Rogue One, which I think is phenomenal, probably Disney's best Star Wars take. But it also did all the Bourne movies, Mike, which are not too bad.
Yeah.
And he did one of our favorites, Mike, that we saw, The Great Wall, starring Matt Damon as an Irish archer.
Oh, yeah. What was Pablo Pascal?
Well, I
don't even know what his national. I guess he was supposed to be Spanish, maybe. That's close enough.
Interesting movie. Now that I kind of look back on it, I thought it was dumb at the time, but I've seen it again on cable, and I'm like, this is kind of enjoyable. Oddly enough, I think it's the Hong Kong cinema element of it that kind of pulls it out. But Robert Towne had his hand in this again, uncredited. So I'm starting to question his merit as a screenwriter.
Interesting. He's comes up here as hits and misses, I guess.
Yeah, he had done Last Action Hero 5 years earlier, tried to polish that up and to no avail. So,
right.
Yeah, but anyway, so this had $140 million budget, which is at the time was one of the highest for Disney for a live action movie, Mike. So it's big time stuff.
Yeah, I saw the Touchstone name come up at the very front. I was like, I got a little queasy there.
Well, we'll get to that here in a minute. There's a triumvirate of things that should have warned us not go any further, but I guess we ignored the warning signs, Mike.
Yeah, so. the exploding title that should have.
Right cue the exit. But they probably spent a little bit of money on their budget, Mike. So you wanted to go through and do your trick, monkey boy. Who's in the movie?
It's a meaty cast. We haven't seen this media cast since maybe Con Air. But like you say, this is the space version. We have our. I'm going to kind of scattershot this one. I'm going to go for the main lead, Bruce Willis, former Mr. Demi Moore, who teases us all with his music ability in The Return of Bruno, and then became a famous spokesperson for Seagram's wine coolers. I don't know if you read those great ads, that really catchy 1980s ads. He's our hero. Stamper. Apparently he can drill anything, Justin. He's gone all over the world.
Yeah, we'll get to some of that too, Mike.
He does a lot of his Bruce Willis-y kind of things. His daughter, played by Liv Tyler, is in the movie. It's one of those chicken and the egg things. I don't know if she's in it because Steven Tyler's music and Aerosmith's music is so prominent in the movie, or like I said, is it because she was in the movie that his stuff? Well, never mind. Anyway,
I want to say there's probably some quid pro quo in there somewhere.
Yeah, of course. And she's our girl that has to stay on the ground and suffer just like the audience does.
I related to her quite a bit.
I know, right? We have our I guess the third lead of the cast was Billy Bob Thornton, who's the head of NASA, who seems to have a little too much power for
flight control.
Flight control. He seems to control all the other aspects of everything else. He's a former son-in-law of John Voight, so he's got that going for him. And he's lead singer of the Boxmasters.
That's correct. Yeah, nice call.
Nice little group. Then we have what I want to call they call it in the movie the wrong stuff, but it's like our little group that very reminiscent of Con Air, or even the aforementioned Twister movie, where you have to have this is a 90s staple in some of these movies, where you had to have this gang of goons that have like everybody goes by a nickname, like Bear, Rockhound. I don't remember a couple of them because it didn't matter to me anymore. But you had the interesting thing was you had Peter Stormare and Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi plays Rockhound, but it's kind of neat to see these two guys and have a kind of a Fargo reunion.
Their future collaborations not as successful, Mike.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of interesting that they were good in Big Lebowski, but I think that was the same year as this movie. But Big Lebowski came out probably right before this. Anyway, I think they ripped off. I haven't seen Fargo in a while, but I think they ripped off a scene from that movie where he rips the tape off Steve Buscemi's face, but I could be wrong. Maybe one of our listeners might know. There's a lot of scenes in this movie. This is an aside. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that are rip-offs of other scenes from other movies, but that's par for the course.
I actually have a little section about that, Mike.
Thank you.
Good call.
Will Patton, he plays Bruce Willis's right-hand man. He's one of the
from The Postman.
Exactly the Postman co-star.
It's been about 10 minutes since we talked about that movie. So.
I know, right? I think he must have a clause in his contract. He's not in a lot of movies, but whenever you see him in a movie, or whenever I've seen him in a movie, he must have a clause that says his pulse rate can never go above 70. Just a thing I've noticed. He just never seems to emote or have too much emotion above a certain bar.
Nope.
You have Owen Wilson.
Wow.
I think his character was named Oscar in this movie, but it's basically Owen Wilson playing himself.
Yeah.
I did a silent little applause when he died. So spoilers. I know you really like his role.
To be honest with you, I was going to talk about this later, but why not talk about it now? I didn't notice him dying.
Oh, really?
What happened to Owen Wilson in here? I promise you, I watched every frame of this because
he was in the Independence when it crashed, man, and
okay.
he died in his seat. Apparently,
Well, luckily they decided to shoot all this stuff really darkly, and then have the guys
yes,
wearing these big helmets, and then shoot them from like long shots. So yeah, obviously, I should have probably seen that, like given those conditions. But yeah,
that's all right.
all right,
You had Michael Clark Duncan, who
sure did, yeah.
who plays Bear. And that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know about him.
Bear, yeah.
He kind of plays himself too in this movie. Then you have our Ben Affleck. How could I forget him? He is the boyfriend of Bruce Willis's daughter, Liv Tyler, in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a source of antagonism between him and Bruce Willis. But of course,
yeah,
you can see it from a mile away that he'll get his redemption arc at the end.
Yeah.
And then I want to mention two guys that are two of my favorite like side actors that never have starring roles in movies, but always you see their face like that guy, that's Lucius Malfoy. Jason Isaacs is in this movie as an MIT scientist, works for NASA, great English actor.
Always plays that guy too.
Yes, he plays exactly. He's a bad guy in Patriot, and he would play the Bannister Tarleton kind of role.
Yeah.
Then William Fichtner, who he's one of those guys you see in so much stuff, and you're just like that guy, but he never has like a starring role anywhere. And then there's another guy, Justin, and I didn't write his name down anywhere. And let me consult my notes real quick. I think his name is Chris Ellis. He's one of the guys who's working at NASA in this movie. He's like this. He's
that's him.
Billy Bob Thornton's right hand. I looked him up. This is the one of the. I had to look it up. I apologize. I shouldn't do it, but I did on Google. He's been in 5 of our podcasts. He's a Bruckheimer, Michael Bay kind of regular side character, and it's incredible how many movies this guy's been in that are big action movies where he just has kind of a side role. But he was in like Days of Thunder and Godzilla and this one at Con Air.
A movie in space, he's in mission control.
He's in flight control somewhere in that office or in that little
go flight. Yeah,
go flight. And that's your cat. Oh wait, I wanted to mention Keith David. He's kind of the bad guy. Of course, the military is bad in this movie. He represents the military. But he's the actor most famous for not putting his sunglasses on.
Yeah, and Roddy Piper made him pay for that, didn't he?
That's right. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Wow, that's exhausting, Mike. Is the show over yet?
I'm telling you, I don't want to fall asleep and I don't want to close my eyes, but I might have to. That's
all right.
Tough.
Well, let's see if we can't keep you interested just for a few more minutes here, Mike.
All right.
So just a couple notes on that cast. Bruce Willis, notorious malcontent, there was a bit of a problem on set. He and Michael Bay didn't get along. He didn't kind of like Michael Bay's shooting style, so those two decided to never work together again. Denying the movie going public of that collaboration, Mike, might be a blessing. The studio gave him a $175,000 private trailer for his use to kind of placate him, which he never used.
Oh no. He didn't have a massage therapist like Jim Carrey.
No.
Oh, darn it.
Tom Hanks, Robert De Niro, Arnold Schwarzenegger were all considered for the role that Billy Bob Thornton played, believe it or not. Michael Bay did not like the way Ben Affleck's teeth looked, so he got them fixed for $20,000. He offered to do the same thing to Steve Buscemi, and he said, no, thank you.
Why would you want to fix the weird guy's teeth?
I don't know.
Keep it that way.
He said I have a $1 million smile. Thank you very much. And some colorful language about what he could do with his offer. So that was good. Liv Tyler role was offered to several actresses. Mila Jovovich, who we covered in
Fifth Element.
Yeah, Fifth Element. Turned it down. Robin Wright turned it down. And Denise Richards was offered the role as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So
too busy, I guess, with Starship Troopers to do.
Yeah. Steve Buscemi says it has a great role here. He took this role because it was initially offered as a more normal, smart character because he has a history of playing kind of like weird, swarmy, sleazy characters. He took the role, and then the screenwriters, after he agreed to the role, quickly rewrote the role to accommodate his weird behavior in this film. So they kind of backdoored him on that one. That's fun.
It showed too. I mean, you'll probably talk about it, but
he was lost.
It wasn't written very well. Like at times he's, he even says it once. I thought he was joking with the guy about how he had 2 degrees from MIT and graduated by the time before he was 20. And it's like, okay, is he really smart or is he playing goofy dumb? What is this?
Speaking of that script, Michael Bay is not entirely happy with this film. It's one of his least favorites of his portfolio. He blames that a lot to a compressed 16 weeks shoot to get this movie out by the 4th of July holiday. So that it was the studio's problem.
Of course.
Not his, right?
No, of course not.
Yeah, the script was a little wonky. We mentioned the rewrite of Steve Buscemi's character, but also the original romantic subplot between Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler was not in the original script. They shoehorned it in there based on the success of the romantic subplot in the other disaster movie a year earlier, Titanic.
Oh.
They figured that they could, steal some of that energy from the young teen audience to go see a love story in a disaster film into this one. And it essentially results in the two most agonizing minutes in movie history. And we'll kind of get to that here. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Roger Ebert hated this movie just before his demise. He famously said, "This is the world's first 150-minute trailer." And a lot of that's got to do, he's on track there. A lot of that's got to do, the average scene length here is 1.5 seconds, Mike.
Holy mackerel.
So the movie is a whopping 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and average cut is 1.5 seconds. That's about 6 miles worth of film they shot, which
movie for spazzes.
Last one they shot on film, and I believe all the editors had carpal tunnel syndrome at the end of this. Some other notes about this was the last Laserdisc produced for Criterion's collection. So this is the last of that last movie published on that format, which made film nerds like me sad. But there you go. It's a whole lot of stuff about this movie. Let's talk about a little bit 1998. So other movies in the theater when this came out, about a week earlier, you had Dr. Dolittle released. That was not the most recent bomb with
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. No, this is the Eddie Murphy version, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So that was in theaters. About a week after this, Lethal Weapon 4 came out, to the delight of no one. And then the movie Small Soldiers came out that same weekend, which is kind of a neat movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a sleeper movie.
Same target audience as this movie, most likely. So about toys that come to life, whatever. The following week after that, you had There's Something About Mary, and that was a huge box office hit for the rest of that summer. This was the second biggest movie of 1998. Saving Private Ryan was the first one.
Okay.
Some other things in 1998 on the music scene, Mike, we always like to talk about what's on the radio. We had Just the Two of Us by Will Smith. Again, another song.
Not a Bill Withers song? Or was it a remix?
Redone, remixed.
Okay.
But again, better covered by Dr. Evil and Mini-Me later on. Much better version, in my opinion. You had Come With Me. That was the Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page remix of their song.
Oh, the Godzilla song.
Yeah, the Godzilla. Oh. That came out earlier this year, too. That's where he just says, yeah, over the Led Zeppelin song. Help me out, Mike.
Oh, Kashmir.
Kashmir, thank you.
Quick question, because you probably know from researching this stuff. I guess Armageddon did better than Godzilla at the box office.
Yeah, it was number 2. I think Godzilla was number 9 that year.
Okay. Yeah. So Godzilla was kind of a flop, but it wasn't as good as
no, not as good as this.
And it obviously didn't have the budget of Armageddon. But
going back to the music scene, we had the song "Bittersweet Symphony" by the band Verb.
Not big fans of the Rolling Stones, are they?
This is one of the most gangster plays in music history. Sampling was a pretty big thing back then, and these guys. Yeah. Sampled maybe the last time the Muzak version of that.
Right.
They sampled that riff and total pimp move. The Rolling Stones said, yeah, you can use our song, but you can't receive any royalties. We're going to take all the money from it.
Yes.
Go ahead, release it. And they did. They stuck by their guns. And then Verve came out with all those other songs like yeah. So there you go.
That one and that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But they got crushed by Keith Richards really led the charge on that. He was not a big fan. It still isn't to this day. And they kind of use this to set a precedent. So don't steal our music, guys. Make your own. We also had Turn the Page, another cover song. This one was covered by Metallica. I think it's a Bob Seger.
Oh, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah. Just a few other things.
Yeah. It just sounded so much like the original that it was kind of annoying. I hate when when a cover basically apes the original so closely.
Yeah, just do a different arrangement. Make it your own in some way. I don't know. But who are we to tell Metallica what
I know.
Some other things in 1998 before we get started here. Marvel offered the rights to all their comic book characters to Sony for $25 million. And Sony turned it down. Save for the Spider-Man. They thought Spider-Man was the only one people might want to see. But Now that franchise is close to $35 billion worth of revenue. So next call there, Sony. And Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra got married for 9 days, Mike.
Oh, that's
That's
sweet.
about as long as it takes for a green banana to become ripe. All right, so that's enough nonsense for 1998. So the big thing about that year was the release of this movie over the 4th of July weekend, and its rivalry against Deep Impact. But this was a tough one, Mike. But it has its place in pop culture, so I think the best thing to do is just kind of go into it head first and see where we come out alive, just like the guys did in this movie. So, Mike, anything else you want to talk about before we get going? I guess it's time to get started. So
no, I can't wait to hear this plot because
it won't
take
long.
Okay, cool.
Right.
I'll hit the button right now.
Hit the button. All right. So the movie kind of opens up with the Touchstone logo. So that's strike one. Then you get the Bruckheimer logos.
Strike two.
Strike two. And then the third one, Mike, was a little more subtle, but
Charlton Heston narrating.
Keen Ear, yes. We have Charlton Heston narrate the beginning, kind of loosely referencing the science, air quote science, involved in the asteroid impact event that killed the dinosaurs, saying that a 6-mile wide asteroid hit the planet in the Cretaceous period and created a dust cloud that lasted 1,000 years, which I think that's more around the 150 years. But,
there's a few things. Yeah, it's funny since this movie's come out, they've kind of tweaked that theory a little bit more, like you're saying.
Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty geologist. So it kind of starts out in space and on the space shuttle Atlantis, and it just kind of blows up, and it's a result of some asteroid particles hitting it, but they're not entirely sure at first. They think it's a bogey attack, a Russian bogey attack, but they go right to DEFCON 3. And you start seeing these little asteroids the smaller ones start to hit New York because they always hit New York first.
They never hit like out in the wilderness of Nebraska or something. They have to hit like a major urban area.
Yeah, they never hit like the Sudan or
exactly.
Or Morocco. They always hit New York, right downtown too, which I always think is funny.
Oh yeah.
And then go ahead.
You'll probably get into it. It's hard to watch now, 3 years before it actually happened, seeing New York, eviscerated by, you see like the Empire State Building.
Yeah, and seeing the towers get hit, that wasn't cool.
I did. You know what? I did like the little subtle shot at the Godzilla movie there, where the guy selling the Godzilla toys is,
Yeah, and the little dog that looks just like mine was trained to attack those. They spent $20,000 a day on that dog to be on set to do that trick, Mike. $20,000 a day.
Ugh.
I mean, this is where the stereotypes really get reinforced already. You get the hanging with Mr. Cooper guy being the sassy cab driver.
Mark Curry, I was like, what the hell is he doing in there?
Eddie Griffin, the dog owner, just being the wacko New Yorker. You kind of know what you're getting just through this first, scene. So you get the standard wake up the president scene.
Oh yeah.
So, all the actors that have played these roles in all these other movies just kind of, recycled into this movie as well. So you kind of know all these guys from other movies. So it saves them for any character development, Mike, because they did all that in the other movies.
Oh yeah.
So, don't bother.
You get the obligatory scene of a guy running with paper, on the clipboard, and all you see is his feet. How many times have I seen that damn scene where somebody running into an office?
This is just a composite of other movie scenes cobbled together to make a 3-hour movie. So we kind of cut to this oil rig run by Bruce Willis. I don't know his name. Was it Harry Stamper?
Harry Stamper.
Okay. And he's got this crew of roughnecks, Mike, which we'll get to here in a minute.
I'd already forgotten. I thought it was like road hogs or something like that.
No, roughnecks. And they're working on an oil drilling rig and out in the ocean. And we're led to believe that he's some sort of expert. He's got a crew, and they spend a staggering nearly 12 minutes here. He tries to kill Ben Affleck with a shotgun, which is supposed to be funny, I guess. Because Ben Affleck had the nerve to have a relationship with his daughter, and that's, you got to flush out that trope as much as you want to, the jealous dad. So what I liked about this scene, Mike, is that, he actually shoots Ben in the leg. And there's some mystery around that injury, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the nerds at NASA kind of do all their work and report to the president that they've got 18 days before the asteroid makes contact with the Earth, and they call it a planet killer, Mike. And this is
and we've already passed by it, but there was this, I guess, the obligatory scene where you have this retired guy looking through his telescope, and he's the first one to spot this, asteroid coming at us.
Yeah.
And he calls up NASA and tells them where it is. And he says, so since I suck, I get to name it or whatever.
Yeah.
And he names it after his wife. And it's like, aha, that's a funny joke. And it never comes up again the rest of the movie. Like,
Yeah, it was funny how he hated his wife, wasn't it? Really funny.
And then it's like it was just such a throwaway scene. You're like, why do they even have that? But it could have been easily edited out of a 2 hour and 40+ minute movie.
2 hours 40 minutes, Mike, and every minute counts. So Jason Isaac is one of the main nerds, and he tells Billy Bob Thornton that they've got a plan that they've been working on as a contingency for this for years, and it involves drilling into the asteroid and planting a nuke in the core and then blowing it up. And they feel that their astronaut team is prepared to do it, but they want to use Harry as a reference. So
he's drilled everything.
He's drilled everything.
He's been all over the world, Justin. Okay.
Yeah. But what I like here is they say, these guys are the best drillers in the world. And they jump cut to the rig, and there's this huge disaster. Like they're completely incompetent. Things are running around over the place. They accidentally find oil, which is not really a thing, but we'll kind of talk about that later. And then I kept getting reminded of the scene from The Right Stuff where Harry Shearer and Jeff Goldblum go on the aircraft carrier and recruit all the astronauts. So they kind of do this thing, and they make this play to Bruce Willis and explain the gravity, no pun intended, of the situation. And so he agrees to see them, and he sees that the astronauts don't know anything about mining. So he flips the script and says, well, why don't you take the experts who have mining and train them to be astronauts? Like, that would be easier. And because it's Armageddon, they said, okay, let's do that. So there you go. So we get introduced all the members of Bruce Willis's crew, and they all live in slow motion.
Yes, and there's some montage, Justin. You get
another montage.
You get to come together by the Aerosmith version, and you get to see everybody character and what they're doing.
They're all backlit. They're all in slow motion, and they're all cool, badass rebels. So no one saw that coming. And they do that whole thing just so they can say the joke, talk about the wrong stuff when the government guy sees them walking. And I know that was just so they could deliver that J.J. Abrams line. That is a J.J. Abrams line. I would bet a paycheck on it. So they end that montage with another montage. They go right into another montage, Mike. This is the training montage. Set to the tune of Sweet Emotion. Yep. Another Aerosmith song. We get it. Aerosmith's doing the soundtrack. We get it.
And then more scenes lifted from The Right Stuff too. Even with the nurse lady checking in on
I was
isolation
furious.
room.
This is
the guy holding the little bag, the little colostomy bag.
From the colostomy bag to the rectal checks to the singing. I mean, it is to have those scenes lifted from that wonderful movie into this garbage is just atrocious. But I bit my tongue. And then we slip into another montage. I mean, there's 3 big montages right in a row here. This is the simulation montage where they actually kind of go into the training simulators and do all the stuff. They've got 2 crews set up, and Ben Affleck leading one and Harry's leading the other. And they're already kind of planting seeds of doubt about Ben Affleck's ability here. And
he's a hothead.
He's a hothead, Mike. He go rogue at any time.
He's a loose cannon.
Yeah, he sure is. Then we talked about this scene here. There's a 2-minute scene here where Ben Affleck sweet talks Liv Tyler to the tune of another Aerosmith song, "Don't Want to Miss a Thing."
Oh yeah, was it weird to hear that her dad is singing over this scene where she's being fondled with cookies on her bare stomach?
I got to tell you, when this scene started, I hit the mute button and just looked at the timer so I could time out how long it was, because I remember just cringing about this. Yeah. This is a legendary douche chill moment in cinema history, and I think everybody needs to see this movie just for this.
Just for that.
But just once, because we can't be held accountable for anything after that. So
we're not going to give you a time. We're not going to give you a timestamp on it. You're going to have to find it yourself.
Yeah. So this this segues into like the last montage of the second act here, and this is the last night montage, where all the roughnecks go back and make their
roughnecks.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep saying it till it's not funny. But they go and kind of make their arrangements to see their family members and make other more nefarious arrangements, but whatever. So, and then there's like 20 minutes worth of ready to launch scene that is just exhausting. Yeah. They take forever to. Okay, we know you're going up into space. Just go. But they stretched this scene out almost 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, I mean it was longer. It was longer than the first side of Boston's third stage.
Exactly.
And it's more montage nonsense too. Like even that they're walking just like the right stuff. They're walking to their two rockets.
Well, what I noticed, they transitioned from ripping off the right stuff to ripping off Apollo 13 because they wanted to put their own version of their own flight sequence thing in there. Go flight.
Yeah, and they have the president speaking and how this is our last hope, and they have the montage of American flags and people drinking Cokes on front porches and AM radios, and of course France and China and Turkey are all entranced by the same stuff,
Yeah, just like in Independence Day. So there's another movie they kind of ripped off. Another movie we covered.
Oh yeah.
All right, so they finally decided to launch the two ships
side by side. Doesn't that seem kind of dangerous to you?
We'll get to that, Mike.
Okay.
So there's some continuity things we'll kind of polish up on our old segments about continuity at the end here. We'll talk about that scene too, but about 30 feet from each other. So they had this dumb plan. They're going to go up and they're going to go to the Russian space station and get some fuel, and then they're going to use the moon's axis to slingshot around, just like they said verbatim in Apollo 13.
Well, okay. Question. They never explained in the movie. Why would a Russian Soyuz style space station store all that fuel?
Mike, you need to save this to our continuity section.
Okay, I'm sorry.
If we go in real time, Mike, we're never going to stop.
I mean, were the Russians expecting to go into deep space? Real soon or something?
Yeah, and they don't keep one solitary person up there, and they don't keep liquid oxygen up there. But their plan is to go up there, get enough fuel, and then creep up behind the asteroid, like it's a sentient being, so they won't see it coming. But they kind of mount it from the rear, and they kind of they want to land on the asteroid, and then set up their drilling equipment, and then plant the nuke. So now it's getting good, Mike.
Oh yeah, we get docking procedures and everything.
Yeah. And of course, everything they make a meal of it, and they. The nihilist who's stuck on the Russian space station, he's kind of stir crazy and
Carl Hungus.
Yeah, and of course there's a leak, and that causes the thing to explode, and they fill up both the.
It's Justin. It's Russian equipment. Of course, it's going to break.
Of course, it's not as good as the USA.
That's right.
But they make it around the moon, and what they realize is that they kind of come a little bit too close, and they run into an asteroid field. Believe that, around a big asteroid. Who would have thought that was there? But it ends up with one of the one of the space shuttles crashes.
The Independence goes down.
The Independence with Ben Affleck and Owen Wilson.
Wow.
And Bear and some other characters that can just the red shirts in Star Trek. They just get died. So, but before they crash land, they kind of get in the cargo hold and brace for impact, and then they kind of go off the map for a while. But the other shuttle, Freedom, is the one that's driven by William Fichtner, and it's got all the other guys on it, and including Bruce Willis. And they actually land on the asteroid, but they kind of overshoot their landing zone by about 26 miles.
We get the famous quote, "Houston, you have a problem."
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah. 150-minute trailer. But then unfortunately they land on iron ferrite, so they basically just land on iron, which is not. They were hoping to land on rocks, but now this makes the drilling substantially more difficult. So they start out great. They break the drill bit after about 35 seconds, and then they get angry at each other and do a quick swap out, and they just keep drilling. It's not good, but they keep breaking bits every few inches, and they lose their transmission back home. Ben, the nihilist, and Planet of the Apes get revealed that they survived the first crash, and they drive their little drilling tank to meet up with the other ship, even though they don't know where they are.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting space dementia?
No, they made that up because the screenwriters couldn't figure out why Steve Buscemi's character had just completely changed.
Right.
Yeah, space dementia, Mike.
Why were the armadillo drill things, little vehicles, why were they armed with machine guns?
Don't know.
Okay.
It looks cool. Yeah, they all had Gatling guns in them.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
I guess to kill aliens, Mike.
Maybe General Zod was going to land up there.
Yeah. Well, they stole from the other major movie. Why not Superman 2?
Sure.
So, for some reason, Ben Affleck knows the way to the Freedom, the drilling site, but there's a big ravine there, Mike, and they do an Evel Kneivel jump, which I thought was just wonderful there.
It was another plot convenience was the gravity that kind of was like looked like regular Earth gravity for most of the time, but all of a sudden freaked out and became
suddenly
less than moon gravity.
This thing has like tremendous gravity that's pulling down this meteor shower that kills them both. So there's a subsequent meteor shower, asteroid shower that kind of takes out the crew as they're drilling.
And we lost Gruber.
Yeah, whoever Gruber is.
I think somewhere that was a favorite line in the movie was Ben Affleck. With all seriousness, says we lost Gruber.
R.I.P. Gruber. We hardly knew ye. We also lose the driller, the guy named Max, who I think was the elf in Home Alone that gave Kevin McAllister some Tic Tacs on New Year's Eve.
And he was also in. He was the messy, sporty guy in Herman's Head. If you remember,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but he gets cooked. As I mentioned earlier, somewhere in this fray, Owen Wilson dies. I didn't catch that.
Wow.
But anyway, people are dying, and it's bad news. And it turns out that the nukes are they need to drill 800 feet into the asteroid before they can detonate the nuclear bomb. And it turns out that they reestablish comms, and president learns that they're not anywhere close to their distance, so that he decides to manually override, which is not something any of these guys knew about. So
second protocol. It's like a black bag operation.
It was a black another face-off reference. Or of course they both have to turn their keys, Mike, and you get a rogue Russian guy on flight control that kind of interrupts a second to buy him a few minutes of time. And Ben Affleck shows up, and they start drilling, and they get about 800 feet finally. Like 795 wasn't good enough. No. And there's some issues about the physics there that I'll kind of cover here as we wrap it up. But at the end, they realize that as a result of kind of going off and on to the manual override, it kind of fried the nuclear detonation device. So it turns out that one of the guys has to stay behind to detonate the device. And we all knew who that was going to be from the first frame, and that's Bruce Willis. So he decides to he gives this tearful speech to a crying Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler's just here to cry and look pretty.
Yes.
And she does both very well, but there you go.
She does. And like I said, she represents us agonizing getting through the rest of this movie and this mission control.
So at the end, the guys kind of get in the back into the ship and head off and leave Bruce behind. And then Die Hard blows up the Death Star. And then everybody's happy, and then the movie's over. And then we cut to some Super 8 footage of Liv Tyler and Ben Affleck's wedding with another Aerosmith song.
I know, right?
Don't want to.
And let's give full credit to Diane Warren on this one.
Yes,
the same mind who brought us the end of the Con Air credits song too, and she brought us this one, so she should. It's her baby.
It's her fault. That's what you want to say, Mike.
I wasn't gonna go that far, but yeah.
So that was it, and that So we kind of. It was 2 hours, nearly 3 hours, guys. I can't really talk about everything that happened. We just try to hit the big things, but.
How did the Arc de Triomphe still stand when the rest of Paris got flattened?
All right,
and it was right near ground zero. I don't understand.
Okay. All right, well, let's get to awards and accolades, then we'll talk a little bit about what's called some continuity problems.
All right.
So
yes.
All right, so this movie was bonkers big, $36 million opening weekend. It did $202 million domestically, and another $554 million worldwide.
Gosh.
And at the time, it was the Disney's highest grossing live action film. Had a few run-ins with some awards and the award season. It got nominated for 4 Oscars.
Oh, wow.
Screenplay, actor, director. No. Sound effects, editing, visual effects, and song. It
of
lost
course.
everything.
Good.
Saving Private Ryan took a lot of those things. The song was beat out by the song When You Believe by Stephen Schwartz from The Prince of Egypt. Catchy tune. Remember that one, Mike?
Wow.
Of course not. Yeah. So let's get to where the awards actually mean something. Let's talk about the Razzies.
Yes.
Bruce Willis won for worst actor. It was nominated for worst picture, worst screen couple.
Wow. I'm not being sarcastic here. This is 100% on. I would not blame Bruce Willis for his acting in this movie. I mean, he was doing his Bruce Willis kind of stuff, and
he was acting what was on the page. Let's be honest.
I thought Affleck and Tyler had more chemistry than he did with Lopez and Jiggly or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't okay.
There's some salvaging
Yeah, I
comments
mean,
I want to make. We've been pretty hard on this movie, but
I guess they had to go for the obvious target, and that would be it. But they could have. There's much more meat on that bone they could have chewed off than that.
Right. So it also, I got some Razzies nominated for Worst Director, Michael Bay, but he lost to Gus Van Sant for his shot-by-shot remake of Psycho.
Good.
Worst Supporting Actress, Liv Tyler, but she was beaten up by Maria Pitillo in Godzilla, Mike. So there is a God. We're talking about movie schlock. We also want to talk about MTV, right? So it was nominated for Best Movie, Best Male Performance, Best Female Performance, and Best On-Screen Duo. It lost all of those, but it did win Best Song, Mike. And
of course it did.
And it won the Best Action Sequence for something. I don't know.
Action sequence. What was it the?
I think it was when they were flying through the rocks and things.
Slingshot.
Slingshot
stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
we'll give them that.
But shaky cam and dark footage. I mean, who knows what happened here? Whatever. So let's talk a little bit about our personal feelings, Mike, and then we'll kind of talk about the technical difficulties with the film. So why don't you give us your first impression here? From the first time you watched it to your most recent watch, and what's changed for you?
Oh, first time I can't even remember, but I had a kind of it was corny schlock. I think because it was still recent memory for me, I remember being much more favorably impressed with Independence Day than this movie. I don't know if it was because it was just a better story and it was a little bit less schlocky than this movie, but that was only like 2 years before this one, and it for me, it left a much better impression as being a good movie compared to this. This seemed like it was just full of stereotypes. Even back then, for me, I think watching it now, I dreaded watching this movie. I wanted to do the movie for a podcast, but I didn't want to watch it, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But like previously, like we said, stereotypes, cardboard cutout characters, everything's two-dimensional. There's foreshadowing of plenty. Every plot point comes from a mile away. You can see everything you can see coming. I don't know if it's because we've seen so many more movies in the last 25 years that are similar, or maybe not. It's a Michael Bay movie, so you can kind of know everything's going to be a certain way. You have the evil military. You have the trope of overspending for NASA. The whole world depends on the U.S., and our jingoism. And there's all this, I kind of referenced this earlier. There's like the stale images of Americana. Like it was funny because I had a flashback to the Days of Thunder movie where they show Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's just a farm. But here it's like France is Mont Saint Michel in the background in a small little like cafe, and then Turkey is represented by the Hagia Sophia, which it should have got its own cast credit in this movie because it was shown about 3 or 4 times. China, of course, is like a dark street and like little junks on the water.
Sure,
people eat wonton soup. It's like, okay, we got it.
It's China.
This images like that. I'm too tired to go into the continuity, but it's just so much. I'll let you handle that part.
Okay.
It was more. The only thing that bothered me was, like I said, I think there would have been more. If there was a truthful movie, there would have been a lot more panic in the streets. I don't think we could have kept this from the public for as many days as they imply in the movie. I mean, if we really want to get nitpicky, how do we keep this from all these other countries not knowing? Why wouldn't other countries pitch in?
Yeah.
You don't destroy like New York like you did in this movie and keep that hidden.
Right?
It's just really silly. And
they had CNN in 1998. So
it's exactly. Not everything was done by telegraph. There's so much more I'd want to get into, but
you're tired, honey.
In deference to you, let's hear what you got.
All right. Well, I'm kind of the same way.
I yield my time.
I think I'll reclaim my time. So I'm like you. I didn't go to the theater to see this. I couldn't find the motivation for sure. I watched it on a VHS rental, and I remember this. It was a meh movie, MEH period. I just thought it was dumb, and I watched it, this weekend on my laptop on my kitchen by myself, and I thought the same way. It was just meh, but a little bit dumber, and not a whole lot changed. It was the context of the stereotypes and the number of themes that just not even pays homage to, just steals, just outright steals, lazily. I might
stealing from Doctor Strangelove. I mean, what kind of brass balls must Michael Bay have that include a scene of reenacting the Slim Pickens riding the nuclear warhead? It's like, really?
Did you notice Michael Bay put himself in this movie, Mike, as a NASA scientist? There's a scene where he actually has lines.
I didn't notice that. Oh my gosh,
that didn't help things being. But yeah, I just, like I said, it made me appreciate all the movies that it steals from a lot more. Like I wanted to go watch The Right Stuff again. I wanted to watch Apollo 13 again. Like I want to see those things done the original way and done correctly, and dramatically, and well done and originally. But that's essentially all I kind of pulled out of this. And there's a lot of stuff that's ripe for satire here, and we're going to get into that. So, but it didn't move me one way or the other. And I just realized that it's just a typical lazy Hollywood recycling of other themes and tropes into a generically packaged movie. But I did, however, I don't want to get too grumpy, because then we just come off as sad and tired. But there were times when I found myself engaged in this movie. I was like, and I course corrected and I said, "Stop it! Don't you dare get involved in this movie." But there were times when I was like, "Okay, I'm not going to go take the garbage out yet. I'm going to watch this scene because I want to know what happened." So there's some element of that's here. If this movie came out now, it would probably still be well received by the same demographic or target audience. I think it's not groundbreaking. Sure. I think just by its inherent nature, it's just a retread that people just feel comfortable with, and I think there's no reason that retread wouldn't make it 25 years later. So,
well, okay. Here's a question for you and our audience. This is a question to ponder.
I love those.
Okay. You're getting ready to go to the theater, and you have a choice in 2023 to watch either Deep Impact or Armageddon. What do you think most audiences would flock to?
Rhetorical? Probably. I would say Deep Impact, because Armageddon had like science and acting in it. And who needs that?
Good point. Yeah, I remember Deep Impact seeming a lot more dark, and
it was maudlin. It was kind of scary, it was
it had a little bit grimmer kind of feel to it and sadder. Whereas this was like, I guess because it was a July 4th release, it was like, all patriotic and everything.
I think if we can use like the context of our show, it was like Rocky 3. Like Bruce Willis was Sylvester Stallone, and the Asteroid was Clubber Lang.
I pity the fool.
they had to beat him with unattainable odds, and they do. And it's an underdog story in America. So there you go. So we talked a little bit. So we kind of made our feelings clear on this, guys. We're not big fans, but there were some things we appreciated, especially the fact that we love when a big movie like this doesn't bother covering its tracks and just blatantly exposes its errors. So I'm going to go back to a segment and dust that off that we called Continuity Schmontinuity, Mike.
Oh, nice.
Brought to you by Battlefield Earth, the movie. I want to kind of point out some of the things that I noticed, and you can pitch in here, Mike, if you feel compelled. But there's 5 or 6 dozen things that I thought were interesting, but I'm going to kind of whittle it down to things where the plot holes or the plot convenience, or it just kind of overtook the movie for me. The first one is that we talked about Ben Affleck getting shot. So he gets shot in the left leg with a shotgun. The next scene, the wound is on his right leg. And then the next scene, the wound is altogether gone. So congratulations, Ben. How did that disappear? And you get shot in the leg with a shotgun, you're not going to be cleared for flight, I'm pretty sure. We see a lot of fire in space here, Mike.
Right.
Not a thing. The meteor shower finale where everybody gets killed, that would suggest a significant amount of gravity to me.
Correct.
Much more than
it's something that's the size of Texas.
Yeah. So I noticed that. Well, yeah. So speaking of the size of Texas, Mike, so they kind of did their math wrong. If it were the size of Texas, and assuming that it was relatively spherical or cylindrical, that means diameter of that asteroid would have been roughly 292 miles. Which means they would have had to drill, significantly deeper, about 100 and
right.
The
800-foot number was,
Yeah, they didn't
hold.
They didn't use their slide rule. Like they miscalculated that significantly. The munitions expert assigned to the bomb doesn't know what wire to cut.
Oh yeah.
to deactivate it. The end when they're doing the Super 8 footage of the wedding, it's intercut with, and I swear to God, I would bet that they stole these scenes, like B-roll footage from other movies. There's scenes at the end where kids in like denim overalls and crew cuts, like circa
Oh yeah, yeah.
1963, are running through the streets waving their little American flag, and there's like a JFK mural.
Yeah, like I said, every scene of America was like except for a couple New York shots, there was like little like small town Americana scenes from, like you say, like from the 60s or even the 70s maybe. But
I guess they were just celebrating 40 years earlier, just in case.
Maybe. I don't know, man.
Yeah, so we mentioned that the shuttles taking off at the same time and within
side by side,
within 30 feet of each other. So that's not really a thing. The forces of the trajectories would push those guys way off course, if not kill each other. But you got to get both shots in the frame, so that's more important, I suppose.
How was it broad daylight in India and in the U.S. Midwest at the same time?
That's why you're the best co-host in the business. That was my next bullet point. They're all celebrating. They're all celebrating at the same time the destruction of this asteroid in the sky.
Right.
But apparently, it's daylight savings times in India everywhere. So it's all in the day. So nice job. They didn't even try. I mean, come on. How hard would that be to do a night scene in Egypt?
The cast, as I'm watching the cast, they have a asteroid consultant. Why can't some of these movies have a geography consultant? We've had a couple of these issues on a couple other movies where like this can't happen. You look at a globe, look at it. It seems so obvious to me looking at the movie. I guess I'm thinking too hard for a movie called Armageddon.
You are, And my favorite one here is remember they had 2 crews, 2 shuttles, 2 cargos, 2 bombs. So the first bomb, why didn't the second bomb, which was in the Armadillo with Ben Affleck, why did they just detonate that from a distance?
I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh!
See, again, nice job, guys.
Well so the whole second protocol, oh my gosh!
Yeah, there you go.
That's one of the biggest flaws in the movie, other than like the lack of panic in the world. But that's a good one. If
this movie had any shred of decency, that might have ruined it for you, but it doesn't. So this movie was dead on the table before I offered that little nugget.
It was because it was a rushed opening, Justin.
Yeah,
so, even Michael Bay said so.
They only had 16 weeks, right? Yeah. So, but it's just at the end, just of the day, just a total disaster. So speaking of disasters, Mike, we love a good disaster film. We've covered quite a few of them on our podcast. We encourage our listeners to kind of go back in our back catalog. But we thought for this week's edition of You Just Made the List, Pal, the boys here at Grumpy Nostalgia will talk about some of our other favorite disaster movies, natural or otherwise. So, Mike, why don't you enlighten the listening audience with some of your favorite picks, maybe 2 or 3, and then we'll pick an honorable mention.
I am glad you added the word favorite, because usually when we come to these lists, it ends up being, for me, kind of I'm Mr. Negative, and I end up picking 3 rotten stink bombs. But these are genuine movies that, for me, didn't not necessarily great movies, but they left a great impression as a disaster movie.
There you go.
And let me go in chronological order. My first one is Poseidon Adventure, the classic 1972 movie with Gene Hackman, Ernest Borgnine,
Shelley Winters.
Red Buttons. How can you forget the great swimmer Shelley Winters?
Awesome movie.
Roddy McDowell. Leslie Nielsen, I think, appears as the captain. He tells everybody this ship's unsinkable.
Surely you're joking, Mike.
Yes, surely. And it's a great movie. It really, it's got some pretty bad special effects when you look at it now, but that's not what you're there for. You're there for the human drama of watching people try to escape a ship that's upside down. And it's really a well done movie. And for one of the first 70, the 70s had a whole spate of disaster movies, and this was probably the one that kind of kicked them all off. After this, you get the Towering Inferno and the Bees and all.
Earthquake.
Yes, I can't forget Earthquake. But the Poseidon Adventure for me was the best of this lot.
Yeah, great movie. Back in a time where you could have like Red Buttons as a main character, and
exactly.
Now Red Buttons would be, Brad Pitt.
And think of Ernest Borgnine in his white tank top.
I do every day. Thank you for bringing that back up. horribly remade. Was it the 90s or early 2000s? Poseidon.
I want to say early 2000s. That one with
Yeah,
like Kurt
okay.
Russell, maybe.
Yeah. Just a
Ugh, yeah.
bad idea to make an
Stayed away
iconic
from that
movie.
one.
Yeah, don't do that. So
Or
great picks,
beyond.
Mike.
Don't stay away from Beyond the Poseidon Adventure too.
Oh yeah,
I think that was
unnecessary sequel, right? Yeah.
very unnecessary. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I kind of stayed out of the 70s, Mike, because I thought you were going to kind of populate that space. So my
Yes.
picks are a little more recent. So I'm going to go with my first pick, which is Cloverfield,
Yeah.
roughly represented by one of the co-writers of this gem, J.J. Abrams. But this was a kind of a found footage movie, kind of very unique at the time, where New York, of course, New York, not not Nebraska, not Lincoln, Nebraska, but New York. There's an alien invasion, and it's shot from a documentary style. And this is when everybody had cell phones, and that proliferation of like self shot footage was there. And this entire movie is shot that way, and it's got kind of a queasy effect to it, but very original, very interesting horror movie where the entire city is burning, and these horribly unique and original alien creations kind of lurk at every corner, and there's a lot of like found footage stuff. And I just thought this was a very clever, unique take on a disaster film for the time, and just really enjoyed it. And the sequels I have not seen. I think they kind of go off.
Is that the one with John
topic.
Goodman in it?
Yeah.
It for me it had no relation to the Cloverfield movie.
Yeah, I think it was by a name association only, but
right.
From a disaster standpoint, this one really kept you scared and tense, and you never knew what was going to happen, and you never see anything like that before. So hats off to Cloverfield for a unique take on a disaster movie. That's my first one from 2008.
All right.
What you got next, Mike?
I'm glad you stayed away from the 70s, by the way. My second one is a little gem from 1977 called Black Sunday.
Great pick. Yeah.
Being a big football fan, this was for me right at my wheelhouse. It involved it involved I think it was Bruce Dern, but he's a Goodyear blimp captain, and he is wanting to end his life, and a secret society comes to him and says, "Hey, you're gonna be flying over the Super Bowl, right, in LA?" And he's like, "Yeah," and we want you to take out the whole state. So they plant bombs on this Goodyear blimp, and it has Robert Shaw,
Robert Shaw's in that too, right?
Famous Irishman, but he plays an Israeli agent, believe it or not, in this movie. And he works with the FBI, I think, to try to take the whole thing down. And it is, it's got interesting scenes of the actual footage of a football game, and interspersed with like really hokey scenes of a football game. And it's a good. I think I've mentioned his name before, John Frankenheimer.
Great.
Kind of peaked. He peaked with the Manchurian Candidate, maybe, and then kind of went down from there. But this was on his way down. But it's still a good movie,
Great movie.
It has kind of a TV movie feel to it, but it's still I don't know. For me, it holds a special place just because when this movie I saw when a kid, I was like, it involved football and disaster at the same time. I was like, okay, I'm in. So there you go, Black Sunday.
Yeah, you left out Frankie Pentangelo from The Godfathers in that movie too.
Oh yeah,
got me waiting in the lobby.
Hands me a can of peas.
Can of peas, my ass. That's Ritz cracker, duck chopped liver. Oh, Frank, I love that guy. Why could every movie have him in it? So,
he has to be the last action hero for ridiculous 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Okay, let's move on. My next one is a movie that I kind of was triggered by this movie that they stole about 90% of its content. I'm going to go with Apollo 13 from 1995. I always have been kind of a space junkie in NASA, and I really kind of engaged myself on all the Gemini and Apollo and all the other Mercury astronauts, and kind of got well versed. So when this movie came around, this is really kind of the pinnacle of like all my hobbyist type stuff kind of coming to the screen. And it was just a fantastic movie, and it's schmaltzy and it's big Hollywood and it's Ron Howard, but this accurately caught with Jim Lovell being a consultant on the film. They really kind of captured all the American ingenuity, and it sounds corny, but the engineering and ingenuity and what they did to keep those guys alive under ridiculous conditions. There was literally tinfoil keeping them, from the void of space. And they had, the computing power of a Texas Instrument, calculator today, just to keep those guys alive, and just using physics and the wherewithal and American ingenuity, dare I say it. and just to capture that on the screen and just to really appreciate it. So
it has Clint Howard in Mission Control. How could it go wrong?
It could not go wrong. But just the thrilling, and even though what happens, that at the end when they go radio silent, when they finally appear, you still, I've seen this 10, 12 times, and you still never quite sure if they're going to make it. And that's a sign of good filmmaking, good writing, and and just from a disaster standpoint, everything went wrong on this mission, and they. But great film. For those newer kids that haven't seen it, please get yourself to.
It's the movie Bill Paxton should be remembered for instead of Twister.
And it's got Bill Paxton in it. Come on, give me a break. But that's Apollo 13 from 1995. So, Mike, how about your last pick and maybe a couple honorable mentions if you have any?
Oh, righty. Let me. I don't want to step on your toes, but I got some stinkeroo disaster movies.
Okay.
And it's weird because all of them are probably within the last 10 years or so. Well, maybe 14, 15 years. The movie 2012 came out about 14, 15 years ago with John Cusack and Danny Glover.
Yeah, that stinks.
It was cashing in on the whole possibility that the world was going to end based on the Mayan calendar, and it was just a dumb special effect laden, just silly movie. Speaking of special effects, San Andreas came out a few years later. With The Rock as a rescue helicopter pilot who has to rescue his family while they're stuck in San Francisco. And oh my goodness, I could not stand that movie. I was stuck where I was. I was forced to watch it.
Was Jack Black in that? He should have been.
He should have been, exactly.
Sorry.
No, but
personal grievance.
Gerard Butler was in the next one I have on here called Geostorm.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was. You talk about a movie that needs to have some of its science explained to me. I need to have I need to have a NASA or MIT expert tell me how this movie was even conceived.
Yeah, who needs it?
Yes, exactly. And let me go with my actual good movie that will be my last one is Perfect Storm. Kind of like Apollo 13. It was based on a true story of these guys who went out on fishing, a fish from Gloucester, and they are in the Andrea Gale. And it was based on the true story of these guys getting lost in this storm where basically two nor'easter and like a tropical storm come together and create this.
The perfect storm.
There you go.
Hence the title.
It's the only thing I could watch George Clooney in, and I thought of this movie while I saw William Fichtner in when the movie we just watched, and I was like, oh yeah, he was in that. He was actually in a good disaster movie, along with Mark Wahlberg, who I could actually tolerate. Pretty competent in this movie. There's some really you had Diane Lane and
big
John
fan.
C. Reilly. I mean, he had some really good performances in the movie that captured kind of a disaster on a small scale, and it just focused in on these guys on this boat. You knew what was going to happen to them, but you're still held almost breathless, waiting for something good to happen, which it won't. But still, it's really well done.
Just the isolation, being out on the sea with nothing, nowhere to go, nothing, no one can help you.
When that giant wave comes and they're looking at it, they're like, "Oh crap!" It's just that's horrifying. That scene right there. It is.
Yeah, that's a great pick, Mike. So, all right, so I'm going to go a little sentimental, Mike, and this one just kind of shoehorns itself in very nicely for me, so I'm going to take advantage of it. So I'm going to go with the very first Grumpy Nostalgia episode, our first topic, which was Twister from 1996. Bill Paxton and just Bill Paxton. That's all I remember that movie.
What about I remember Rabbit? I remember a guy.
Rabbit. Yeah.
See, they had the same.
Rabbit is good. Rabbit is wise.
They had the same goofy crew as our Armageddon movie here.
But again, speaking of perfect storms, this was set up around these storm chasers that were set up to explore this storm front and to get data to support their scientific research on early storm devices.
Poor Eddie. Remember poor Eddie?
Poor Eddie. Yeah. But it was a movie that me and Mike decided to tackle as our first podcast. And I remember being so proud of that first podcast when I first did it. I can't listen to it now. This is I think our 52nd episode now. Oh my goodness. And let's just say we've come a long way, Mike. But it's sentimental to me for several reasons. I love this movie in the theater. It was the epitome of the perfect movie we could cover. So that what we thought was a great episode for a pilot. Because disaster movies are fun. And I don't know, it triggered this. So we're still doing it here today. And again, it's just a sentimental pick, but from a disaster movie standpoint, just a groundbreaking CGI, very exciting movies, stupid dialogue, just a fun kind of romp. Again, just people trying to stay alive, and then the good guys win, and that's all you need in these things. So that's my final pick. But I have a couple honorable mentions here too, Mike. The movie Alive from 1993 about
Ethan Hawke.
It was the Chilean.
It was Uruguay. It was either Uruguay or Chile, but they crashed in the Andes.
The Chilean soccer team that crashed in the Andes and found their way out to Uruguay. Just a heart-stopping sequence when the plane crashes, and just the strength and the willpower and the resolve of these young men to try to stay alive, and ultimately what they had to resort to, which is infamous now. But just the movie itself could have been very sappy, could have been very tropey, but they did an interesting version of it, and they made it more about they made it a disaster movie about survival, and I really appreciated that. The triumph of the human spirit kind of comes out through it anyway, but they didn't take shortcuts around what they had to do to survive, and the trauma and all that. And it was an interesting watch, and just a great story, a great book, by the way. Pierce Paul Reed wrote this book early, and just kind of captures it, but very, very close to the actual story, which I thought that was a great movie. We can't forget about Sharknado, like in 2013, that great disaster movie. It's possible that sharks can get caught up in a tornado, and
yes,
yeah.
It's possible to make a few movies around that.
Anything with Tara Reid chopping a shark in half with a chainsaw, I'm down for us. Another sentimental pick, Independence Day from 1996, our second film, great disaster movie there. But they're all really kind of stealing from my my other honorable mention from Gamera from 1965, which a lot of people don't realize that everybody attributes the kaiju invasion to Godzilla, but when Gamera came out in 1965, it was a tremendous hit, and it really just kind of set the standard, I guess, for monster movies to follow. And just the trampling of Tokyo has been done several times since, but it's got Kenny, our favorite Kenny, is in that movie.
Well, Gamera is a friend of all children.
He's right. He tastes like turtle meat. But yeah, that's my other honorable mention, Gamera from 1965. So there you go, guys. Wow, we talked a lot about this dumb movie, Mike. We almost talked about the movie as long as it actually was. So
I know. I didn't even get into the irony of the fact that John Denver wrote "Leaving on a Jet Plane."
Yeah. He died in one of those things, didn't he?
Yeah, possibly.
He died in a glider, didn't he?
Yeah, it was an experimental glider. Yeah, too bad.
Yeah, it's experimental, all right. Well, that's going to kind of wrap it up for today's show, guys. We want to thank you guys for listening and putting up with us for this long. So if you have any questions about the show or any interest, you can check us out on our Instagram page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. And if you want to send us an email with a request or comment on the show, you can reach us at nostalgiacrumps@gmail.com. So, Mike, that's going to kind of wrap it up. Anything else you want to say before we head out of here today?
Well, I was going to email you this question, but I'll just ask you. Do you think the animal cracker should be classified as a cracker?
I'm not going to comment on that, but I will say in honor of our deceased Max, we drilled through this turd, Mike. So for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.
Whoa! This is so much fun, it's freaky!